I never believed that public shame could arrive dressed in silk and champagne. But there I was, seated in the third row at my younger sister's wedding. I wore the only formal dress hanging in my closet, trying my hardest to disappear amidst a sea of perfectly styled, effortlessly polished guests. My son, Benjamin, sat next to me, his small legs swinging beneath the table in a miniature suit that took me 2 full paychecks to afford. He looked so proud to be there. He believed, with the hopeful heart of a child, that this occasion would make us feel like we belonged again. Perhaps, if I was honest with myself, I carried that same fragile hope. My sister, Rachel, moved through the day like a movie star. She always had that gift, stunning, magnetic, endlessly admired, especially by our mother. Rachel got the admiration. I got the comparisons. She basked in the spotlight. I learned to thrive in the shadows. Still, I had come. I smiled when I was expected to. I applauded when the couple kissed. I steadied my voice when people said, "And you're the older one? You do not look like you have a 9-year-old son." Then the speeches began. The best friend of the groom started with light jokes and easy laughter followed. Then it was Rachel's moment. I anticipated something heartfelt, perhaps a few lines about love or a shared childhood memory. I even lifted my glass in quiet expectation. But I should have known better. Rachel raised her crystal champagne flute and addressed the room with a glowing smile. "Thank you all so much for being here," she said, her voice bright. "It means everything to share this moment with you. And of course, I would like to say something about my big sister." I glanced at Benjamin and smiled. His eyes sparkled with anticipation. For one tender second, I believed she might offer a kind word. Rachel continued, "Olivia's always been a role model, a single mother, strong, independent, and clearly not wanted by anyone else." The room broke into laughter. My stomach twisted into knots. I hoped I had misheard her. But Rachel kept beaming, as if she had just delivered the most delightful punchline. Some guests looked uncertain. Most laughed harder, glasses clinking in their hands. I could not find a place to look. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Benjamin tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Why did she say that about you, Mama?" Before I could find the words, my mother, Margaret, chimed in loudly from her table. She did not miss a beat. She might be used goods, but she still polishes up nicely for her age. Laughter again. This time colder, crueler. The kind of laughter that strips you bare, that changes how everyone sees you, not as a guest, not even as family, but as a spectacle. I could not move. I could not breathe. My cheeks burned, but I refused to cry. Not in front of my child. Not for them. I curled my fingers around the napkin on my lap, gripping it like it might tether me to reality. I scanned the room for a friendly face. Just one. My grandfather stared into his plate. My cousin giggled at something on her phone. Even my uncle, who once told me I reminded him of my late father, would not meet my gaze. Benjamin looked lost, confused, and wounded. That was the moment that broke me. Not the words, not the ridicule. The way my son watched it happen. The woman who kissed his scraped knees, who stayed up late to help with his math homework, was now the subject of her own family's cruelty. I wanted to leave. I wanted to gather Benjamin, walk out, and never look back. But something in me hesitated. I wanted to speak. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted them to know they had no idea what I had carried. But my mouth was dry. My legs trembled beneath the table. And then A chair scraped against the floor. I turned my head just in time to see Daniel, the groom and Rachel's impeccably poised fiancé, rising from his seat. He did not appear amused. He did not glance at Rachel. He did not scan the room. His gaze was fixed entirely on me, and something in his expression made the room still as if someone had flipped a switch. In that instant, I sensed something was about to unfold. Not a rescue, not a confrontation, but a reckoning. There is a common belief that being the eldest sibling means you are a leader, a guide, someone others look up to. But in my family, I had always been more of a cautionary tale than a role model. My name is Olivia. I am 35 years old, a single mother, the black sheep of my family. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town with my son Benjamin. He is 9, the greatest gift of my life, and the sole reason I keep returning to rooms that have made me feel insignificant. I hold 2 jobs to make ends meet. In the mornings, I serve coffee at a local cafe. At night, I manage the front desk at a small hotel. My life may not be glamorous, but it is mine. On Saturdays, I make Benjamin pancakes. I know how to mend holes in his jeans. He tells me I am his superhero. That is all the strength I need to keep moving forward. Yet, in my family, being a single mother was equivalent to failure. Margaret, my mother, made certain I felt it at every gathering. She valued appearances above all else. To her, Rachel's wedding was not merely a celebration. It was a second chance to restore the family name. Rachel is 5 years younger than I am. She is beautiful, successful, always received the best of everything and never needed to ask. She has always known how to make it look as though she earned it. Margaret adored her. If Rachel so much as sneezed, our mother would offer a silk handkerchief. If I fell ill, she advised me to take vitamins and stop exaggerating. When I became pregnant with Benjamin, the world shifted under my feet. I was 26 and believed I was in love with a man who promised to stay. By the 5th month of pregnancy, he was gone. No letter, no phone call, just vanished. My family offered no questions, no comfort, only silence, only judgment, only the familiar chorus of, "I told you so." But then I had Benjamin, and when I held him for the first time, every cruel word ever spoken to me became background noise. Still, a small part of me yearned for my family to see me as more than a single mother. I wanted them to see someone who had endured, who had persevered, someone worthy of love. So when the invitation to Rachel's wedding arrived, I said yes, despite not being in the bridal party, despite my name being misspelled on the RSVP card, despite the fact that I would need to rent a dress and do my own hair in the bathroom mirror while Benjamin practiced smiling in his little tie. I told myself it was for closure, that perhaps, just perhaps, this was their subtle attempt at reconciliation. The venue was breathtaking. White roses adorned every surface. Gold-rimmed plates sparkled beneath delicate string lights. A quartet played softly in the distance. Rachel looked like she belonged on the cover of a bridal magazine, radiant and graceful, basking in adoration. When she walked past me, her smile faltered. "You made it," she said, as if my presence was unexpected. She glanced briefly at Benjamin. "He is getting big." There was no hug, no warmth, just polite conversation before she drifted back to her spotlight. Margaret did not even acknowledge me. She walked by as though I were part of the catering staff. But Benjamin was enchanted. He whispered that the chandelier resembled a spaceship. He said Rachel looked like a princess. When I saw the joy on his face, I decided to stay for the reception, even as the ache of exclusion began to bloom in my chest. Our table, table 9, was tucked near the restrooms. I laughed quietly. It felt appropriate. We ate our salads. I helped Benjamin when he spilled chocolate mousse on his tie. I avoided Margaret's gaze and tried not to react when I heard my name whispered between clinks of glasses. Then the speeches began, and I realized this evening was not about family unity or forgiveness. It was simply another occasion for Rachel to shine, and I was about to become her entertainment. The speeches followed the expected formula: warm sentiments, just enough humor, rehearsed lines delivered smoothly. Rachel rose, back straight, champagne flute in hand. Her gown shimmered beneath the lights. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "This is the happiest day of my life, and I am surrounded by the people who mean the most to me." From my seat at the back, I tried to convince myself that I was included in that statement. Benjamin sat on the edge of his chair, captivated. Rachel spoke beautifully about Daniel, about fate and timing. I allowed myself to relax, to hope. Then she pivoted. "And of course," she said with a playful smirk, "I want to give a shout out to my big sister. You have always been such a strong example." The room turned. I sat a little taller. I offered a polite smile. Rachel continued, her voice light but barbed. "You are the bravest woman I know. Raising a child alone. No husband, no partner. Just you and whoever was available to babysit." Chuckles scattered through the room. My stomach tensed. "Seriously," she added, "it is amazing how you keep going. A single mom, unwanted, but still showing up." Laughter. Raw. Loud. Unfiltered. My breath caught. My cheeks burned. My fingers clenched the napkin. I looked at Benjamin. His face had changed. The confusion in his eyes said everything. Then Margaret laughed. A loud, ringing laugh. She leaned toward her table mates and said, audibly, "She may be used goods, but she still cleans up well." Another burst of laughter. No one touched me, but I felt slapped. Everyone around me laughed, as if this were normal, acceptable, as if mocking a woman who had worked tirelessly to raise her child with dignity was somehow deserved. I looked at Benjamin. His smile was gone. He leaned in. Why did she say that? What does she mean? I had no answer. I could not protect him, not from this. My heart raced. I searched for an exit, for someone to intervene, to say enough. But no one did. People looked at their plates, their drinks, their phones. Even Grandpa Howard, who once called me his little lion, avoided my gaze. I could have endured it if it were just me. I had grown used to swallowing that kind of cruelty. I could have stood, held Benjamin's hand, and walked out quietly. But seeing the confusion in my son's face, that broke something inside me. So I stood. Not because I had a plan, not because I wanted a scene. I just needed air. I needed to breathe without choking on their ridicule. My chair scraped against the floor. And then, from the head table, another chair moved. Daniel, the groom, stood. He looked pale. His jaw clenched. He took the microphone from Rachel without asking. The room fell into silence. He did not offer a smile. He did not attempt to ease the tension with a joke. His face was a mask of restrained emotion, not just anger, but something more profound, a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. I had seen that look before, but never directed at anyone other than me. Before he could speak, I turned to push my chair back in. I reached for Benjamin's hand. I was prepared to leave quietly, with grace. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I had done it before. I could do it again. But as I began to walk away, Daniel's voice cut through the silence. Olivia, please do not go. The room froze. All heads turned to him. Rachel stiffened. Margaret narrowed her eyes. The DJ reached for the soundboard, but paused when Daniel raised one hand slightly. He looked at no one else. Just me. I cannot pretend I am all right with what just happened, he said, his voice calm and firm. I will not stand up here and let cruelty masquerade as humor. The air shifted. Guests exchanged glances. Some stared at their glasses. Others looked toward Margaret. But no one spoke. Daniel stepped out from behind the head table and walked slowly across the room. His pace was deliberate, each step seemingly heavier than the last. He stopped in front of our table, next to me and Benjamin, who sat frozen, his small face wide-eyed. I have heard so much about what it means to be part of this family over the past year, Daniel said. Tradition, loyalty, appearances. But what I just witnessed, that was not family. That was mockery disguised as celebration. The room shifted again. Chairs creaked, utensils clinked, but no one interrupted. Daniel turned to Rachel. You humiliated your sister. You made fun of her for raising a child alone. You laughed at her, and worse, you did it in front of her son. Rachel opened her mouth, but no words emerged. Daniel continued, unwavering. She did not ask for this. She came here today, quietly, respectfully. She smiled. She brought her son to witness your happiness, and you turned that into a punchline. Rachel's expression cracked for the first time. I had never seen her look uncertain before. Not like this. Daniel turned back to the room. Olivia did not stand up here to defend herself. She did not ask for sympathy. She does not need a stage. But I cannot stay silent. Because if I am about to marry into a family that believes shame is tradition and cruelty is comedy, then I need to ask myself what kind of man I want to be. A gasp rippled through the room. Someone dropped a fork. A woman nearby whispered, "Is this really happening?" Benjamin looked up at me, eyes round with wonder. I didn't know how to respond. I had entered the evening bracing myself for survival. I never expected anyone to stand up for me. Not like this. Daniel met Benjamin's gaze and gave him a soft, meaningful nod. Your mother is the strongest person in this room. Do not forget that. Then, Daniel looked one last time at the stunned guests. I believe I have seen enough. With that, he set the microphone gently on the table, walked past Rachel without another glance, and headed toward the exit. I stood there, motionless, clutching Benjamin's hand. No music played. No one clapped. The room felt suspended, drained of energy. The fairy tale had cracked. But for once, I was not the one left shattered. The moment Daniel walked out of the reception hall, it felt as though someone had unplugged the entire event. No one applauded. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioning and the quiet clink of a spoon dropping into a dish. The crowd remained frozen, eyes darting between me, Rachel, and the door that Daniel had just disappeared through. Rachel stood at the head table, her perfect posture visibly cracked. Her shoulders sagged. Her hands trembled slightly as they rested on the back of her chair. She looked around, searching for support, for validation. But the expressions that met hers were no longer glowing with admiration. Some faces showed shock, others embarrassment. A few looked angry. Not at Daniel, but at her. Margaret was the first to react. She stood so suddenly that her chair screeched across the polished floor. What an ungrateful man, she snapped. He humiliated you in front of everyone, just like your sister, selfish and dramatic. but her voice no longer carried the authority it once held. The power she wielded with her words had vanished. Her statement fell flat. I did not reply. I did not need to. For the first time in my life, I did not feel the urge to retreat when my mother raised her voice. I turned to Benjamin. He looked up at me, uncertain. "Are we leaving?" he asked quietly. "Yes, sweetheart," I said gently, brushing the hair from his forehead. "We are going home." I rose with intention, standing taller than I ever had. I took his hand in mine, firm and reassuring, and began to walk toward the exit. As we moved through the room, guests parted like a tide. Some looked away. Others met my eyes and quickly looked down. A few opened their mouths, perhaps to offer apologies, but no words came. Halfway to the door, I heard my name. "Olivia." I turned. It was Grandpa Howard. His pale eyes were glassy, his expression somber. He stood slowly and stepped toward me. "I am sorry," he said, his voice low and trembling. I should have spoken up a long time ago. I nodded once. I did not trust myself to speak. I was not angry with him. I understood the weight silence carried for some people. I had lived it, but I would no longer carry their silence for them. Outside, the evening air was cool and refreshing. Benjamin squeezed my hand. "Is the wedding really over?" I looked down at him with a soft smile. "Yes," I said. I believe it ended exactly the way it was meant to. We drove home in silence, the radio off, the only sound the tires on the road and the rhythmic tapping of Benjamin's fingers against the armrest. That night, I tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, and lingered by his door a few moments longer than usual. He did not ask any more questions. He did not need to. The following morning, my phone was full of missed calls, numbers I did not recognize, distant cousins, a few guests I had barely spoken to. I ignored them all. Then another message buzzed through, a text from a friend who had attended the wedding. Someone recorded Daniel's speech. It is on Facebook. Over 50,000 views. You need to read the comments. People are supporting you. I opened the video. There it was. Daniel's voice, calm and firm, calling out a room that had laughed at me. There I was, frozen, holding Benjamin's hand. The comments poured in. "This man is a hero. She deserved better." Crying while watching this. Every single mom out there just felt seen. I did not cry. I did not smile. I simply felt still, like something inside me that had been clenched for years had finally let go. That week, Rachel tried to reshape the narrative. She told mutual friends that Daniel had overreacted, that it was just a joke, that people were being too sensitive, but the damage was done. The truth had already found its audience, and no one was laughing anymore. That week, Rachel tried to reshape the narrative. She told mutual friends that Daniel had overreacted, that it was just a joke, that people were being too sensitive, but the damage was done. The truth had already found its audience, and no one was laughing anymore. A few days later, a small bouquet of wildflowers arrived at my apartment. There was no note, only a simple card that read, "To the Lioness." I did not need to ask who had sent it. The wedding never happened, but something more important did. For once, I was not the one burdened with shame. I was not the one expected to apologize. I walked out of that room with my son, my dignity, and my head held high. And somewhere out there, someone reminded a room full of people, and perhaps the entire internet, what real strength looks like. It has been 6 months since the wedding that never was. Rachel and Daniel officially ended their engagement. No public statement, no social media drama. Just a quiet erasure of what was supposed to be a perfect day. Rachel returned to her social circles as if nothing had occurred. The photos from that night disappeared from her feed. She has not contacted me. I do not believe I expected her to. Margaret called once, not to apologize, to scold me. She said I had embarrassed the family by not laughing along. I listened for exactly 30 seconds before I interrupted her. I am not your scapegoat anymore, I said. Then I hung up. Not in anger, not in drama, simply. Finally. In the aftermath, I realized something. I did not need a grand apology from my family. I did not need them to change or to acknowledge my worth. I just needed to stop waiting for their permission to see it in myself. My life did not magically transform. I still work long hours. I still cook 2 dinners some nights because Benjamin wants pancakes and I want something green. But something within me has shifted. I carry myself differently now. I no longer shrink under the weight of unspoken shame. I do not hide in the back of rooms anymore. Benjamin has changed too. He asks more questions now, thoughtful ones. He wants to know why some people are cruel and others are kind. He talks about Daniel like he is a superhero. Sometimes he gives mock speeches with his action figures, defending the underdog. I watch him, and I know in my bones that he saw something that night, something that will shape the kind of man he becomes. Strong, gentle, brave enough to speak up when it counts. One evening, while we were brushing our teeth, Benjamin looked up at me in the mirror. "Mom," he asked, "are you still sad about what Aunt Rachel said?" I paused, then replied, "Not anymore." "Why?" He shrugged, toothpaste on his chin. "Because I think you won. Even though it was not a fight, that stayed with me. Because he was right. I did not yell. I did not insult anyone. I did not demand justice. I did not cry in front of the crowd. I simply stood up, held my son's hand, and walked away. And someone else, someone unexpected, decided that silence was no longer acceptable. Daniel did not just stand up for me. He showed everyone in that room what love truly looks like. Not the kind wrapped in a tuxedo or walking down an aisle. The kind that recognizes when someone is being hurt and says, "No, not today." If I have learned anything, it is this. Being alone does not mean being unwanted. Kindness is not weakness. And dignity, once reclaimed, is something no one can take from you again. So, no. I did not dance at my sister's wedding. I did not toast. I did not toss a bouquet or shed happy tears under fairy lights. But I left with something far more valuable than approval. I left with my son by my side, my head high, and the deep, quiet certainty that I no longer need to explain myself to anyone. That is the ending no one expected, and exactly the one I deserved. If this story moved you, if you have ever been made to feel small or silenced in a room where you should have felt seen, know this. Your voice matters, your dignity matters, and you are not alone. If you found strength in this story, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. Have you ever had someone stand up for you? Or had to stand up for yourself? Share your story. And if you want more true stories that challenge assumptions, that cut deep and remind us what it means to be human, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Thank you for being here.